Hi everyone, I'm at my home recording studio in Los Angeles right now, but a few months ago I gave an Instagram live tour of my recording studio Mirror Tone Studios in New York City with Chandler Poling of White Bear on Instagram Live. It's where I record all my film scores and produce for artists. And we do a whole bunch of other stuff there, audio posts for TV shows and podcasts and films and all that good stuff, and record bands and whatever you think happens at a music studio. That and probably some things you don't think happen at a recording studio. Anyway, I wanted to share that Instagram live video here in case you missed it.
Hello and hi, and welcome to another Instagram live studio tour. I'm going to be chatting today with Roman Molino Dunn, and excited to be seeing his awesome space in New York City, and kind of talk about everything that he's got going on, including his recent release called Snakehead, and all his work as a musician under the name Electropoint. And yeah, just looking forward to getting this together.
Hey,
Hey Chandler, how are you?
hi, I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I was having little internet issues, but
That's all
we're
right.
on. We're on. Cool. Well, yeah, it's exciting to get to see your space in New York. I've been wanting to check it out for a while, so thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, now you are back and forth between New York and LA, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in each city and why you're always back and forth?
Yeah, well, so I lived in New York for 15 years, and then when the pandemic was in full swing in LA, I decided to move there. Basically, I'd always been doing a lot of work in LA, but I have a recording studio here. But then when the pandemic hit, like I'm sure everybody in this space is used to, we were doing more work not in person. So I took the opportunity to move to Los Angeles in January. And now that stuff is getting a little easier with more people being vaccinated, I'm able to come back to New York to the studio. I still have a lot of clients here, so I'll come back in to take meetings or do recordings. But LA is where I live, and New York's where I come to do certain sessions.
Very cool, very cool. If anybody's watching and you guys have a question for Roman while we're chatting, please put it in the Q&A prompt, which is one of your buttons down below. The Instagram is doing this new simpler version of live, and they've turned off the chat function. So if you guys are chatting at us, just make sure you send the Q&A in that Q&A box, and I'll make sure to ask Roman. Now, well, let's start off. Let's see what you got. Let's show us this space that you've got in New York. Walk us through it.
Sure. So let me. Can I turn the
Hmm.
camera around? I just double click on.
No,
Uh,
there should be a turnaround like icon. If you tap us and then down below, there should be the
oh, wonderful.
arrows that
Thank you.
flip
Okay.
us
Well,
around. Yes.
that's my wall,
Uh-huh.
um, and that's my guitar. But yeah, let me turn around here. I'll take a little step back. So that's what I was sitting in front of before. So this is the control room,
Hmm.
and this is kind of the heart of the studio here. It's a Trident Series 65 console from the 70s.
Wow.
And yeah, it was used on a lot of really famous records like David Bowie cut a few albums on it, and James Taylor. So it was pretty popular late 70s, early 80s. But
Hmm.
we still have it here because I'll show you in the other room is our live room. And this thing sounds wonderful for drums, but it also sounds really great when you're like in the film scoring world. Say you do something in the box, like some Spitfire strings or something like that. If you start summing it through the board, you get a whole new like just vibe and width that you wouldn't get if you kept the whole thing in there.
Cool.
But I mean, the main reason I have it is because I still do a lot of stuff in that room over there, which you can kind of see through the glass, which is the live room. So this is the control room. And again, that's the console. And over here we have, let me move some of these here. We have our outboard gear, which, believe it or not, has really shrunk over the years. We sold a lot of it because it's all just done digitally. And things like the board, you still need to get into the computer, right? So it makes sense to have analog for preamps, but it doesn't necessarily make as much sense to have analog for reverbs. Although I do have a really great one down here. This is a MIDI verb from the 80s, and I'm sure some people know this piece because it's one of the few vintage digital verbs you'll see in people's studios. And then we have the Symmetrics, which I just love. And let me know if I'm getting too geeky on gear.
No, that's what this
Yeah.
audience loves. So go for it.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, those Symmetrics, those are the precursors to the distressors. So everybody pays a lot for distressors, but if you get your hands on some old Symmetrics, they're a lot cheaper, but it's the same circuit that predated it, and it's got so much vibe, but you got to buy two of them to get a stereo. And then we've got some Orbans and some other select, actually I have another Symmetrics. I don't use them as much as I used to because people need revisions these days. So that's like kind of the problem in my life. And then over here, I have some tape machines, reel-to-reel ones. We got rid of the big reel-to-reels, but we have a little reel-to-reel for vibe. Sometimes I'll record drums through that. And then the tape, same thing. I'll put like a full mix through there and transfer it back over and then back into the computer and get that sound. And then same here, this is like an old Junker mixing unit, and same thing, just going for vintage vibe with it. But
Cool.
my favorite
Is the printer.
is this. Yes, this thing sounds wonderful. It's the most musical printer. Yeah, no, is this Ampex here. So if people know what this was a suitcase microphone from the 30s, and the preamps are very coveted. So you had to take it out, and it's been reworked to fit into a modern day studio with XLR connections and been recapped and stuff like that. And then, well, here's our patch bag, which there's my coffee. That's a very important part of the studio.
Yes. Well, how do you take your coffee?
Espresso generally, but today I needed something to last, so I didn't pull a shot while we were on this call. So you have an oat milk latte there.
Oh, nice.
And then there's some Universal Audio stuff. We use the Apollo 16 because the newer Apollo stuff has preamps in it, but we don't want preamps at the studio because we're using this guy over here for the preamps, so nothing's colored. And then we have a speaker setup here for 5.1. So there's our center channel and our front, left, and right, and our.
And what's the
LFE
brand
down there.
on the speakers?
These are Dyne Audios. I think BM5As, Mark IIs. And then these are some consumer grade from like the 80s and 90s to check our reference mixes. But that's not part of the general. These are our main speakers here. And then they also continue onto the back wall over here, just for our surround. Yeah, and then, there's keyboards. I guess my favorite, speaking of coffee, this is another coveted part of our studio setup here. Yeah, I know, that gear gets me more excited these days. So that's an espresso machine and a burr grinder and all that stuff. Because it's nice not to have to leave the studio for things. All right, so I'll take you into the other rooms. So we have quite a few rooms here. This is a vocal booth / ADR room. So we have the TV up here, and then with a shotgun microphone for doing ADR, or if you will, doing mandolin ADR. Because sometimes people on screen play the mandolin. Yeah. So that's the ADR room, vocal booth, and everything. And then we have another back office space back here. But this is actually my favorite room I'm about to go into, which is our live room. So spent a lot of time in here recording drums. We do a lot of like jazz bands and Broadway stuff. In fact, a lot of Broadway recording just by virtue of being in New York City. And, all the amplifiers and pedals and, that stuff gets me a little less geeked out as it does the musicians who come in to play with this stuff, especially the drum kits. But in New York, having a studio with a drum kit is one of the main reasons people come to this studio, because you can't really play drums other places. And then, here's my favorite microphone. This is a Neumann TLM 103. I like it more than the U87s because it sounds great on vocals and then also instruments. Because on a lot of the scores I'm working on, I'll be playing this cello over here, and all of our guitars, and that's actually a bass amplifier and our headphone mixer and everything. And then this is a Yamaha. It's a upright piano, so a lot of times we'll take off the actual. I'm sure you've seen composer studios, and they have the front of it off so that they can mic up the hammers and everything, which I like to do, but it's a pain sometimes to leave it off, and then so it's on there. And then this is actually the only guitar amp that gets me super excited. This Vox with a nice Vox head, you get that clean vintage sound and everything with it. And then over here we have actually the microphones, which I'd have to put this down to go through them, but we have some really wonderful microphones. Like this is a Manley Reference microphone in here, so that's like, it's locked. I can't even open it till one of the other engineers comes in because it's like a $10,000 microphone that nobody's supposed to touch. But yeah, and then I'm not going to go through it all, but these are all just different microphones for different situations.
Wow.
Yeah, we have a deep a cabinet full of mics, and then here's the view. I can't do a sideways view in here or maybe I can, but I'm still new to Instagram Live. Yeah, so this is the live room for the most part. And I'll bring us back out to the control room.
Where are you writing in the control room when you're scoring?
Yeah,
where's your writing room?
Well, in LA for the most part.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so most of the time I'm coming back here to do recording. So I'll have either written it, although, I mean, honestly, I used to write a lot here, so I'd have picture up top, and then I'd be down on these two monitors and playing into the keyboards. And so this was my setup for about a decade, just being in this room writing. And it was great because, like I said, I would just go out to the live room and play some drums on the score or bow, the cello, whatever I needed to do in order to work on the score. But now I'm in LA. Yeah. So.
And what about those keyboards? I don't know if we got a walkthrough of them.
Yeah, I mean, this one's actually a quite well-known keyboard. This is a Nord, so it's more of a gigging stage piano, but it's got a lot of synths in it. I mean, I used to have, to the question you were asking earlier, now that I'm in LA, all of my synthesizers have come with me. So all of my, I have a lot of Eurorack stuff and old vintage synthesizers that I didn't leave here. And in fact, what happened with the pandemic was that a lot of people had to decide if they were going to work from home or if they were going to work from, did I switch that? Okay. If they were going to work from home or if they were going to continue working out of their offices. And a lot of the stuff that was in the studio, just, I had to make a choice, right? Do I want to leave my best guitar here so that when I'm coming to a recording session, I have my best guitar? Or do I want to bring it to my home studio in LA? And I think my favorite actual instruments are in LA. But obviously I couldn't bring the console with me, nor would I want to, just because I didn't go through it because it's actually a little dangerous from a studio perspective to go behind, but it's all wired through the walls, and each room you can record in. Like when we do, if I write something that requires an actual ensemble, I'll take stuff out of that room and we'll have a full string section in there. I think the biggest we've done is 16 violins at once in that room.
Wow.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot.
Yeah. I'll share some BTS of that at some point. It's been really cool just because a lot of times, like at least in LA now, if I want to record some live strings or something, I have to rent a big studio and pay a lot of upfront fees. But having a space like this, we can just clear out a bunch of the instruments and hire the players and record it in the place we wrote it.
And where are you in New York with this?
I'm in Manhattan. So specifically, if I'm not sure how familiar you are with the city. I think you come to New York a lot, right?
Yeah, I've been a number of times.
So it's on 29th Street between 6th and 7th Avenues. So
Hmm.
the biggest landmark for people who don't necessarily know, if anybody's watching, would be about 2 blocks from Penn Station or Madison Square Garden.
Mm.
So
Oh
we're
yeah,
right
of
in the thick
course.
of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Wow. Yeah. I was last there for the Grammys when they were in New York a couple years ago at Madison
Yeah,
Square.
they're right across the street. I remember. I would walk by it all the time. So, yeah, that's where we are, right in the middle of Manhattan. It has its benefits, and it also has its own challenges.
Mm.
Like specifically construction. That's the big thing in New York. Is the our recording studio is pretty well soundproofed. The floors are floated. Like this whole area I'm on right now is on a pedestal. It's risen from the rest of the studio, and that's because with the sub speakers and all the noise we make here, we want it to be risen so our neighbors in the building don't complain. But regardless of how much soundproofing we do here, outside construction is just it's too much sometimes. So that's been the
Wow.
challenge in New York, really. But the benefit is we're in Manhattan, and I get clients from all around the world who fly in and are able to come here to record.
That's awesome. That's super
Yeah.
cool. And did you record any of your score elements from Snakehead in this room?
Yeah, actually, the entire production, I performed everything on that album,
Wow.
and what I didn't perform, I programmed. Um, I Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing was done here. Some of it was conceived of or composed at home to some degree, but when Snakehead was done here, I mean, we did that in New York, and the film was here too. But yeah, that's part of what I was talking.
There we are. We're back.
We're back. Thanks, Chandler. Yeah, I'm not sure where you may have parted ways with me, but maybe it was right around asking about Snakehead being recorded here.
Yeah, you were talking about how you did all the instruments yourself and recorded everything in that room, unless you programmed it, and then it kind of spiraled into doom.
Yeah, there was the doom spiral right there. So yeah, I mean, the entire soundtrack was written here and recorded here, mixed here, and we also did Miratone, not myself. We did all of the sound design and final mix for the movie here as well, um,
Wow.
which yeah, I mean, it's really neat to have that happen in house to some degree, because I'm able to maybe voice some concerns or opinions about the final mix of the score versus the sound design, versus the dialogue and everything. So it was really great that that whole production was done, myself composing it, and my studio partner did the sound design and final mix. Um, but yeah, it was written here, and what I would do is, I'd be working on the keyboard, and then I'd go out to the live room and try to add some live elements to anything that I was programming to keep it organic. Um, but that score, it was kind of a hybrid score. So a lot of times what I would do is go out into the live room, record some samples of, I'm not a great cellist by any means. In fact, I'm not good at all, but I am competent to play my scales. And I would go out and get samples and record them in specific ways. Like maybe I should have shown you the mic locker, but we have some really old vintage microphones,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like some of the vintage preamps I was showing you. And what happens is if you record the cello in that fashion, even if you can't play it very well, when you bring that into a contact instrument of your own making and the samples are fresh, you get a sound like nobody else has for that film. And that also speaks to what I was saying before about revisions, is that there's just too many revisions in the work that I find myself doing with directors, where we're kind of workshopping ideas and things that I can't necessarily hire an orchestra to play something and then have them do it again. So there's a lot of sampling done, and that sampling's done in the studio here. And that was kind of the workflow with that. And the great thing was that the director was in New York at the time that we were making that film.
Oh wow.
so he was able to come and check it out in the room that it was written in. Um, Obviously, we did a lot of remote collaboration, like everybody does, even before the pandemic. But we did the ADR for the film here too. That was in the ADR booth, which is cool because normally I don't get to meet most of the actors in the film that I work on, but because I was in New York when we were doing that picture and Miratone was doing the audio post production, I was actually lucky enough to meet more people than is normal for a composer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. I get to be a bit closer to your film than most folks. Let's see, we've got a question here. It
Sure.
says, what was Roman's favorite cue to score in Snakehead?
Oh, great. I oof. Favorite or yeah, I think I've had favorites. One when I'll take the question to me. What was my favorite while I was doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Because my favorite now is something totally different. But when I was doing it, my favorite cue was the theme for Chinatown, because it's just so New York, and I was inspired to be here. And it in that film, place is treated as person, which I guess a lot of great films do that, but they lean very hard into that in this film, and it probably had to do with the director having a really wonderful documentary background where the visual storytelling could really move the film along without a lot of dialogue. And watching Chinatown as I knew it, and as a great director and cinematographer were representing it, was really a wonderful moment in my scoring career, because a lot of times I'm trying to make way for the dialogue, and I have to, tread lightly, if you will, so I don't step on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to just go in and write what I think to be the most prominent melody in the film, only because they had these large sequences without dialogue. So that was probably my favorite.
Very cool. Yeah, and I know that that tune to Chinatown, we were talking about it on an episode of a radio show that I host called Studio Soundtracks, and I pointed out that it's a waltz, and so is there something about waltz in film that really means something to you, or because I feel like it's not used very frequently.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's not. I do think when it is used, it's often for to represent grandeur, right?
Hmm.
As it's used to represent grandeur outside of film. But actually, there was this television show called Penny Dreadful. I don't know if you remember
Oh
that
yeah,
show.
I've never seen it, but of course I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, there was actually a wonderful waltz in that as well when they show Dorian Gray, I think. I don't want to give it away, but I wasn't inspired by that. But now that I'm thinking of waltz elements, I mean, the actual reason that we went with that waltz was because there's a film called In the Mood for Love.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that was super influential in the director's film education. And it's not exactly a waltz in that film, but it is this 3/4 kind of feel. And I actually think what's great about a 3/4 feel, or a waltz in general, is just that we're so used to hearing things in 4/4 that we forget how much beauty there is in different temporal expressions. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so it wasn't a conscious choice to do something like I had seen another film that I was hoping to do. It was just that was what felt romantic and kind of what came to me on that.
Yeah, like you said, it's not used frequently, that 3/4 time signature. So it really stood out as a character, that particular cue for Chinatown. And
Thanks.
the soundtrack is out. So if anybody wants to hear that, they can go hear it on Spotify and wherever you listen to your music.
Yeah, yeah, it's everywhere now.
And what do you have coming up?
Sure. So my next film that's coming out, well, I guess I have two or three, but the biggest one that I'm most excited about is a film called A.I. Love You, which is going to be on Netflix at the beginning of next year. I don't think I'm supposed to share a date, but it's a romantic comedy, so maybe that should give an inkling as to when it could be.
Hmm.
And Yeah, I'm really excited about that film because it's a sci-fi rom-com, and it's it's unlike the last few films that I've done because most of the music, even in Snakehead, it's even though Snakehead wasn't like a drony. Um, I mean, it was dark, but it wasn't like a textural drony score for the entirety of it. Um, but I don't get to do as much uplifting romantic stuff as I would like to do. And it was really cool to follow Snakehead with a film that is a rom com.
Yeah.
Al- Although there is a sci-fi element, so there is some action and darkness in it, but it's a totally different direction than Snakehead.
And do you feel kind of more comfortable in kind of electronic world, music world, or orchestral world, or are you very comfortable with both?
Yeah, I'd say I'm very comfortable in both. I have a traditional music education in the sense that I went to school to be a classical composer,
Mm,
and so I have I got the degrees in theory and composition, and I kind of rejected popular music. I mean, it's been a lifelong battle, and I'm sure most musicians or composers have that as to what do I want to do musically, what genres am I interested in. But as a kid, I studied classical, and then I revolted and became into rock and roll and
yeah.
EDM and all that stuff. And then I went to college, and I rejected all popular music because I wanted to be. Um, Actually, I wanted to write early Renaissance music. I was very into counterpoint, and I studied orchestral and choral music very deeply. But then I became a music transcriber, and I was writing out sheet music. And eventually, what happened was I opened a recording studio. So, long story short, because I had a studio, the stuff that came in was what I had to do, and a lot of that was pop music. So I eventually found my way back to orchestral stuff with like Snakehead. But it's really neat to be able to mix both genres for films these days because I used to think it was one or the other, but most projects I'm working on now, the director wants you to do whatever they feel like at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And are you working on anything that's non-film related that you want to share, or any singles or albums or producing that you're
Sure.
working on?
Yeah, yeah. So I'd say the thing that I'm most well known for outside of film work is producing songs for reality TV stars. And I have a few albums coming out for Drag Race contestants. So one of them is actually, I don't think I'm supposed to say what it is. It's a big compilation of a lot of current drag queens on All Stars, if that gives away some of it, and also on the most recent season of Drag Race. And I just finished up an artist named Peppermint's album, which is
Hmm.
doing really, really well. It's getting a lot of buzz behind its FYC for the Grammys, and I'm pretty excited about that. And that's actually why I'm in New York. I was doing more work with Peppermint. Um, so yeah, pretty excited about that. Even though that was a very close to the chest answer to your question.
Yes. No. So wait, is the Peppermint album out and it's for your consideration right now?
Yes, yes, that one
Oh, okay.
is.
And
Um,
what's it called? How can people hear it?
sure, it's called Girl Like Me, and it actually spawned a Out TV original TV special as well, which
Hmm.
I was able to score, which was pretty cool because it was
Cool.
essentially like a long music video special, but there was about another 15 minutes of score tying together all of the narrative between the music video. So that's like one of those instances I'm talking about where strangely the worlds of scoring and the worlds of producing for artists tend to collide.
Absolutely. What would you say working with drag queens? What quality do they bring to the recording process that nobody else can bring?
Oh, well, a lot. It depends on the queen. So, I mean, what's great is the love of entertaining, right? So a lot of drag queens might have a comedic element, but also a lot don't. I mean, Peppermint's album, "A Girl Like Me," is actually about being trans, and it's about trans awareness and finding love in And that's what I love. I mean, that's why I was saying that rom-com got me so excited, or Snakehead got me so excited, or working on an album like this got me so excited, is because it's about the human condition. And I think it gets overlooked a lot in I guess, traditionally disenfranchised groups like drag queens or the LGBTQIA community. I mean, the first feature film I ever did was a love story for bears. It was called Bear City 3, and it was the same thing. It was a beautiful story, but it didn't have the pedestal because it was for a niche community.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what drag queens bring to it, is that they have a very large appeal and they have a love of entertaining and sharing their message.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to show us your space and talk about
Sure.
Snakehead and all the stuff that you've got going on. I really appreciate it, and congrats on having such a cool New York studio. I know it's rare to have that much space in Manhattan, so
Thank you, Chandler.
congratulations on that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, we've been here for a long time. And it's not just my studio. I own this with another business partner, and we were a commercial recording studio first and foremost, but we were both composers and working in separate rooms between sessions. And now I'm lucky enough that I don't have to be here all the time for the recording sessions to happen, which is really wonderful, and I can focus on just scoring and working with artists.
Awesome. Great. Cool. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you again when you're back in LA.
All right. Thanks so much, Chandler. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Hi, I'm Roman Molino Dunn, a.k.a. Electropoint. I'm the composer for the film Snakehead. I just wanted to let you know that the soundtrack has just dropped, so you can swipe up or click the link wherever you're seeing this to give it a listen, and thanks so much.